All right. Hi, everyone. Want to welcome you all here tonight for our conversation with Stacy Tank. We are also joined by, hi, Stacy, and her son Jackson is here too. He's going to be talking with us as well. I'm going to introduce you to two other individuals who will actually be moderating the conversation tonight with Stacy and Jackson. Just to give you a little bit of background on what our Women's Leadership Initiative is, and really the reason, one of the many reasons we wanted Stacy to speak with us tonight is we're really trying to advance the conversation around women and girls and the leadership opportunities that exist or could exist within their spaces, and how we can continue to promote leadership, what lessons they might want to learn, or opportunities they could take advantage of, and experiences they can learn from and hear about from distinguished individuals like Stacy. So some background on Emily and another Rebecca who is hosting the conversation tonight. Emily Kolodny is the 75th Anita M. Perlman International Nicaea of the B'nai B'rith Girls. She is currently in that position, taking a gap year between high school and attending college in the fall at Tulane University, and she's dedicating her time and energy and very intense passion for the Jewish community to enrich BBYO experiences for teens worldwide. She is currently in Austin, Texas, but has spent the year pre-pandemic traveling to support all of our BBYO communities worldwide. And she is joined by a Tulane University alumna, Rebecca Shaffron, who's also an alumna of BBG, who is currently a program associate for U.S. Jewish grant making at the Charles and Lynn Schusterman Family Foundation. And in that role, she provides support and technical assistance to a portfolio of grants that shape a diverse and inclusive Jewish community, deeply connected to Israel and committed to making the world a better place. Rebecca is also serving as a fellow for the Anita M. Perlman Women's Leadership Initiative, and is going to be starting her MBA at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. in the fall. So excited to have both of them with us here today, and I'm going to turn the conversation over to the two of them to introduce us to Stacy.
Thanks, Becca. Stacy, we're honored to have you join us tonight. One of the reasons that we asked Stacy to join us is that she wears many leadership hats. Stacy is a leader in business, currently serving as CEO of Home Depot's Installation Services, and previously as president of the Home Depot Foundation and senior VP for Heineken USA.
She's also a leader for the causes she cares about. So she serves on the governing boards of numerous nonprofits, including Bright Pink, which is an organization focused on the prevention and early detection of breast and ovarian cancer in young women. And she's also a leader at home and in the mental health community. As a Henry Crown Fellow, Stacy set out to tackle the challenge of childhood anxiety. And in 2019, Stacy, her 10-year-old son, Jackson, who's also joining us, and her mom founded Our Happy Place, which is a resource site and blog for families and educators.
Jackson is also joining us tonight. Thanks for joining us. And in addition to co-founding Our Happy Place, Jackson attends 5th grade in Atlanta, Georgia, and he plays competitive ice hockey and baseball.
And a man of many talents, he's always loved music. And in addition to playing the guitar, he starred as the Beast in his school's production of Beauty and the Beast last year. So we're so glad to have you guys join us to hear your stories and tips for balancing leadership roles. So welcome.
Thank you so much. It's absolutely wonderful to be with all of you and see all of your smiling faces. Thank you for having us.
Of course, it's our pleasure. Just to get us started, I know we mentioned that you are a woman who wears many hats and leads in a lot of different ways. So I think our first question for you would be, when was the first time you thought yourself as a leader and why, or what helped you make that distinction?
You know, I was very lucky that I grew up in a household where my mom and my dad were both working, and they both had formal and informal leadership roles. So from the time I was small, I always saw my mom doing a lot of different things, both in her community and professionally. And so that was the model that she set forth for me. And whether it was getting tapped on the shoulder to babysit when I was really little, or editing the school newspaper, or being in the school play, I was always a curious person. My mom was an educator, and so she encouraged us to really lean in and try things and be super curious. And I always had a lot of energy, so I was always leaning into different clubs and sports and things. And over time, folks ask you, hey, could you take this formal or informal leadership role? One of the things that's always been interesting to me also is leadership versus followership. And when does it make sense to be, in a classical sense, out front, helping, being decisive, making calls, organizing people? And when maybe are you leading in a less traditional way? And when are you truly in a position of followership? Because all of those things are really important. And my tendency is to go grab the reins, and because I'm comfortable jumping in and problem solving, and that was always the natural position to me. It was always less comfortable for me to cede that formal leadership and embrace followership. But again, both are really important. It took me a long time to figure that out. But still trying to practice getting better at both.
Absolutely. And we know that in your leadership with Our Happy Place, you guys lead it with a team. So I guess my next question would be for Jackson, as also a leader on Our Happy Place. When did you start thinking of yourself as a leader?
From the beginning, really. I mean, I never really liked to be a follower. I just didn't find it to be like it just doesn't feel right for some reason. It feels better like when I'm leading something or and always like on top of something that's going on.
Mm-hmm. Jack's very on his details. He's the perfect student. He holds himself to a very high standard. We're often just telling him, you know what, just skip that one homework assignment. It'll be fine, because he's so on the details. And probably no one else's parent tells their kid that. But Jack is such a responsible young man. So we're very, very lucky.
That's wonderful. Being detail oriented is 1000% a trait that bodes well for the future. For you, Stacy, as well as leading in many different ways, you've also led at some of the world's most recognizable business brands, right? Like Home Depot, General Electric, and Heineken. So how did you assert yourself as a leader in these huge and established businesses?
Yeah, I started my first 10 years at GE, and mostly right out of university. And I went through a leadership program there. They moved me all over the world. And what was great about that is I got to learn from a lot of different types of folks and work in a lot of very different kinds of businesses, from NBC Universal in London to working on hydroelectric power and living in Brazil to working in consumer banks in Germany. It was really, I worked in aviation, healthcare, nuclear power plants. It was just the most diverse experience. And so trying to just absorb all of that and figure out, how do these businesses make money? How do these leaders lead their teams? I was lucky to just get exposed to that early on. And I learned a lot of things to do. You also always learn what not to do, which was very rich in learning. And then I went along and did different types of roles there, from finance and audit to working in marketing and communications, sustainability. So in a big organization, you can jump around and try a lot of different things within one umbrella company. And as I went along and started to have more formal leadership roles, I was usually the youngest, female in a male-dominated society or a male-dominated company. And of course, often, as all of us have been, underestimated. And I used to get frustrated about that. And I used to see it as something that was unfair. And over time, what I realized is almost no matter how old you get, people are still going to underestimate you in some context. And that has nothing to do with you. That has everything to do with the things that those life experiences that they've had. But if you can use that as an advantage, the fact that people's bar for you is so low, you can really surprise and delight them and make a huge positive impact on them by figuring out how you can add value. Because there's a reason that someone's asking you to do this leadership role or that leadership role, take that job, etc. It's because you've had a set of experiences that are going to allow you to successfully help that team, that business, that nonprofit, or whatever it is. And if you can get in and quickly and deeply listen to those people, figure out where are the pain points, where's the opportunity, and just simply work hard and try to get things done in service of them in a humble way, people turn around very quickly. It's easy to build trust when those are your intentions. And I've walked into a lot of situations over the years where people said, a woman could never do this job, a woman with young children could never do this job, or who does she know? Why does she even get that job? She's not very smart. All the mean things, right? They all come back to you. But 6 months later, folks realized the reason I was there is because I could help them in some way. And everyone comes around to that at their own speed. But eventually, good hard work and kindness pay off. And that was the strategy that I employed in all of those organizations. And it's helped me both to hopefully improve on my own leadership capability over time and to grow and to be invited into larger and larger leadership roles.
I really appreciate that. That really resonated with me. The importance of leading with authenticity and humility and vulnerability, and really showing how you can serve others. So I appreciate you bringing that importance to light. It's clear based on your experiences that you also are social impact and nonprofit driven. So I'm curious if you can tell us a little bit about the first board you joined and how you ended up getting involved.
Absolutely. And while I was thinking about this, there was a really fun story that I thought I would share with you. My mom's 100% Ashkenazi, so I'm 50% Ashkenazi genetically. And my mom has the BRCA mutation, BRCA1, which gives you 87% lifetime risk of breast cancer, 54% risk of ovarian cancer. And the ovarian cancer you really don't want to get because that's a tough one. And my mom got diagnosed with both. When she got diagnosed with both, and this was 11 years ago because you were a baby, it was your first Halloween, and she's doing well, by the way, which is a miracle because it was advanced ovarian cancer, early stage breast cancer, advanced ovarian cancer. When she got diagnosed, my sister and I both got the genetic testing as well, and my sister and I both have the genetic predisposition for breast and ovarian cancer. So when I found that out, I was in my 20s, and it's a lot to think about. And that was before Angelina Jolie came out and did all of the public work that she did around her mastectomy and prophylactic measures that she took. So the gene had been discovered within maybe 10 years before. There was still a patent on the gene, which has since been overturned by the federal Supreme Court. It was just an early kind of space, and I didn't have any friends who had been through it. So I started just Google searching. What is this mutation? What is a mastectomy? Don't Google that, by the way, because a lot of scary stuff comes up. But through those Google searches, I found brightpink.org. And it was a beautiful, optimistic website founded by an Ashkenazi Jewish girl in her 20s from Chicago. And they had this Pink Pal, kind of pen pal thing you could sign up for to have a mentor who had been through the same thing that you've been through. So I signed up to have a mentor. I went through my prophylactic mastectomy, got on the other side of that, and really wanted to pay that forward. And so I had volunteered to also do the mentoring thing, et cetera. But this must have been 9 years ago and change. I was at the United Nations for an event, and I don't go to the United Nations very often. So this was like that random time I was at an event at the United Nations, and I was randomly invited to this small lunch before this big event. There were 30 people in the room, and everyone went around and introduced themselves. And I'm sitting at the table, and I'm looking across the table, and you have that feeling when you know someone, but you can't figure out how, and you think you might have gone to high school with them, so then you're really embarrassed that you can't figure it out. And I'm just sitting there like, I know that lady, but I literally for the life of me cannot figure this out. So I introduce myself, we go around the table, and it comes to her, she says, "My name is Lindsay Avner. I'm the founder of Bright Pink." And I was like, I almost leapt across the table, like, okay, this is who I am. These are my skills. What can I do for you? I'm really passionate about what you're doing. There's nothing out there for young women who are facing what is a very different kind of decision than generations of the past, because this is now pre-Viver. This is prophylactic. And even my own father was very skeptical about me doing something like that, because these concepts were incredibly new, at least at that time. So she said, fly out to Chicago. We're having our new set of education ambassadors go through this boot camp and you can join. And I was super pumped. I went home, I booked my flight. 2 weeks later, my husband and I were flying to Africa. And we took these bizarre flights on Ethiopian Airlines. We had to go through Toronto. It was New York, Toronto, Toronto, Rome, Rome to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Addis to Tanzania, and then we went to Zanzibar from there. It was ridiculous. It was 36 hours of flying. So we got to the gate in Toronto, and we're standing in line to pick up our boarding passes. And I see someone in front of me, directly in front of me in line. And I'm like, this cannot be the case. And I said, Lindsay. She turned around. It was Lindsay Abner. Not only was Lindsay Abner on the same flight to Rome, she was sitting next to me on the airplane all the way to Africa. So, do you not know that story? So the universe was bringing us together. There was no way the universe was going to allow us not to know each other. And we've become dear friends ever since then. We were just emailing today, and I've been on their board ever since.
Wow, that's an amazing story and such a small world amidst a crazy large world. So, clearly you have a very full plate, being both a mom and having a full-time job with an awesome leadership role and lots of volunteer leadership roles as well. I'm curious if you can give us some tips and strategies for how you balance all of those awesome and important things in your life.
One of my learning edges or learning opportunities, or you could say weaknesses, things that I'm not great at, is saying no to things, because I'm naturally a very curious person and I genuinely enjoy all these experiences. But I sit on 5 nonprofit boards right now, plus the nonprofit that we have founded, and running a multi-billion-dollar business, and trying to be a good mom and wife and family member, and all these things. And it can be a lot, but there were a couple of things that I tried to do over the last few years that I think have been helpful. The first is getting more sort of definitive about what I am going to focus on and what I'm passionate about. And while it's not just one thing at the moment, there are definitely themes. One of them for me is the arts. I am super passionate about the arts, and in particular, bringing underserved children into connection with the arts. That was something that my mom was very passionate about when I was growing up. She was a superintendent of schools and was a principal when I was in middle school in a poor city school district. And she really fought for arts grants, because she knew that when children were exposed to the arts, they would do better in math and science literacy, and they would have better higher educational outcomes, which is absolutely true. There are so many studies about that. So as I'm naturally passionate about the arts, I sit on 2 arts boards here based in Atlanta. One is the 3rd largest arts center in the United States, the Woodruff Arts Center. And the other one is this very cool outdoor experiential theater company. They're all site-specific shows at Serenbe, which is this utopian community south of Atlanta that's just magic. And what's nice about both of those is that we can do things together as a family with both of those organizations. So you've gone to shows, right?
Yeah, it's really fun, especially in Serenbe.
Mm-hmm. When everything, and you want to talk a little bit about the way the shows work there?
So, they're the same actors, but they do different types of shows, and sometimes they do multiple shows at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them live there, and they get their own houses, and they just do that for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, how many have I went to? I went to 2, right? Yeah. So one was this really cool Halloween one, and it was I think, what is it called? The head of your
Oh, Sleepy Hollow, right?
Sleepy Hollow.
They had a real headless horseman. You're outside under the stars, and
It's like you're actually there.
yeah, it's scary actually. There are people jumping out of fields, and like
they had like fire, like on like lit
fire. They had like torches.
Yeah. It's creepy.
So both of those are great because I'm passionate about the arts. Jack is very passionate and talented artistically, and we can do things together as a family. Women's health is very important to me, and Bright Pink is deep in my molecules, and that's an organization I'll always support. And then I sit on the Home Depot Foundation board. And then I'm also really passionate about the earth and environmentalism and sustainability. So I also sit on a sustainability oriented board based in Vermont. So a couple of focus areas there that have helped to be the lens through which I make decisions when folks reach out about boards or other opportunities to try to drive some consistency there. But the other thing I would say, and I never would have understood or believed this, but when I read Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, all those years ago when she published it, one of the things in the book, probably the number one thing that stayed with me, she said, the most important career decision you will ever make is picking your partner. And I met my husband when I was 18 years old, and I had no idea that would be so very true. Dad is so supportive, right? And he does so much. We are equal partners in every way. In fact, sometimes he's doing way more because I'm scooting all over the place, right? He's an awesome dad, and he's super, super supportive of me. And he puts up with my crazy ways when I'm saying yes to too many things, and I'm out at events till 11 o'clock during the week, every night sometimes, and has a good sense of humor about it.
That's awesome. It's inspiring to hear about someone who says yes to so many things and makes it work in the best way. Like you said, you sit on 5 nonprofit boards, plus you run a multi-million-dollar business, and you founded your own nonprofit as well. So your portfolio and business experience is clearly very interdisciplinary. And I think what we'd like to focus on right now is the philanthropy that you founded. So could you and Jack tell us a little bit about Our Happy Place?
Absolutely. So I am just in the middle of going through what's called the Henry Crown Fellowship through the Aspen Institute. Henry Crown, a Jewish self-made billionaire from Chicago. He immigrated from Eastern Europe to the United States, and he was a very socially minded business leader who cared deeply about his people and built a number of sustainable and very successful businesses. When he passed away about probably almost 30 years ago now, as part of his estate, he endowed this fellowship through the Aspen Institute. And the idea was that every year they would pick 20 CEOs who were very intrapreneurial or entrepreneurial. I'm actually I think I'm the only big business person in my class. Most of them have built their own businesses, which they have sold, and all kinds of wonderful adventurous stories about that. But to put 20 CEOs together who genuinely care about making the world a better place and serving and having an impact on a scale that matters, and engaging them in very challenging dialogues around gray areas in our society, ethics. We talk about all the hot button issues, politics and race, and what is fair in society. What are we going to do about many of these things, discrimination, et cetera. And through that, we all launch some type of social impact venture, which can either be for-profit, nonprofit, kind of as you see fit, but has to have a very deep rooting in positive impact on society. And so as I was reflecting on the things that I'm passionate about, one thing that I know for sure is that I have always, and growing up in a family, my family and extended family, we've had many family members impacted by mental health challenges. And that resonates, I think, across the board. When you look at the statistics, many, many people at one point in their life or throughout their life are trying to navigate a variety of mental health challenges. And as a society, while I think it has become incrementally a bit better, there's so much stigma and misinformation around these challenges. And that always really, really bothered me. And I also don't think it's healthy for our society. And as we look at the rates of childhood anxiety or societal depression, and these are all accelerating trends. If we don't do something to renorm the way we talk about these things, the way that we reach out and support each other, this is not going to be good for society. And so as we were talking about what we wanted to do, we had this mutual passion, right? But we didn't know how exactly we could help people. And that's still part of what we're trying to figure out, is how can we make the biggest impact? And I'm also very passionate about trying to get as much to root cause as possible, instead of putting Band-Aids and trying to address what are more symptoms at the surface level. So one of the pieces of research that we've been doing is trying to assemble as much academic research as possible about what is driving these increasing rates of mental health challenge, so that then we can get to root cause and hopefully address some of the underlying drivers instead of addressing symptoms. But we're very passionate about the children's aspect, and we're lucky that my mom, as a superintendent of schools, was the Americans with Disabilities Act officer for her district for over 20 years. And so she's been guiding us. She knows all of the laws and is really a wonderful Sherpa for us to figure out how we're going to serve, right? And have a good impact.
Yeah. I feel like we've came up with a lot of ideas, but I feel like we're still trying to figure out something that's going to be like the big boom, like in production for us, or like what we're going to do in general.
Absolutely. Yeah. So work to be done there, but good things to come.
Absolutely. You can only look to make it bigger and better. You mentioned that your involvement with Bright Pink and also your inspiration for Our Happy Place both stem from your family and are both clearly very personal. What would you say are some of the challenges of leading those things or being involved with them when the cause is something you and your family have both experienced firsthand?
I think it is only a multiplier, because when you're passionate about something, it's not work, it's your life. And you have to give yourself a little space and separation from some of those things. I mean, in order to be able to talk about it, because sometimes it's so raw. You know, when I started working with Bright Pink, I would tell my story about my mom getting sick, you know, as a fairly young person, watching someone go through a chemotherapy, surgery, a recurrence of stage 4, you know, cancer in her spine and her lungs, going through the mastectomy myself, going through hysterectomy and oophorectomy, going, you know, all. Right when you go through those things, it's hard to share it out loud. You know, it's hard to say it. It's hard to believe that that is actually your story. When you hear it coming out of your mouth, it feels like it's got to be someone else's story. So I think it helps to give a little separation so that you feel like you're ready. But the other thing that I know for sure is that sharing your story helps a lot of people. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. The reason I had the confidence to have that prophylactic mastectomy when I was 29 years old was because another woman shared her story with me, and she convinced me it was going to be okay. And it was okay. So I don't know if you are into Oprah, you know, kind of who doesn't love Oprah, right? She does those Super Soul podcasts, and she did one with Lady Gaga. I don't know if you listen to it. And Lady Gaga is very passionate about mental health. And in the podcast, she talks about she has fibromyalgia, which is a very mysterious and debilitating condition. And she talks about how we need to talk about these things so we can renorm what these things are, and then we can help each other as a society. And she's dedicated a lot of her personal wealth to advancing research in that space. And I think she's right. We have to tell our stories so that this stuff isn't scary, and we can figure it out together and tackle it. Oh yes, Justin.
Yeah, so in class, for example, if someone's like dozing off and like someone's asking a question and like everybody's just like, that's their question, blah, blah, blah. I feel like it always helps another person when you like ask a question and the teacher answers it, or you're telling a story. It can always help someone else with what they're doing.
That is a great example. That is so true. Sweet boy.
Absolutely. You got it exactly right. And as you've both shared a little bit of your stories with us tonight, what would you say we can do as we're also joined with teens and parents and young professionals? How would you say that we can destigmatize mental health and anxiety in our everyday lives?
Maybe one thing that's dawned on me from working a little bit more in this space is that sometimes we don't even realize ourselves how we're being affected by things, and being a little more self-reflective and not judging ourselves and judging others is a huge first step. You know, my husband will kill me for saying this, but in another example, my husband had 2.5 years ago, very bizarrely, had a massive stroke and had to relearn to walk and talk and eat and drive and all these things. And it was only after, and he was a young man in his 30s at the time, it was only after the stroke he realized that he has some anxiety. And he never knew, because it's just, as society, you just push yourself forward and keep going, and you don't, as a man, a strong man with, oh, you sweet thing, as a strong man with all, you know, all these responsibilities, you don't take time to reflect on, gosh, why am I feeling so anxious? Why is my heart fluttering right now? Why, you know? So now, you know, if he's willing to talk about that with another guy friend of his, maybe that guy friend will be willing to address it, and then it won't cause a problem in their family or with that person's health. So sharing our own stories, it's tiny little things that add up to the big things.
Really appreciate you sharing that personal story. I think it definitely resonates with me, and I imagine others on the call as well. I want to switch gears just a little bit and ask, do you think there are different leadership skills needed when you're leading within an existing, more established organization rather than starting something of your own? And can you share a little bit about what you think about that?
Sure. Yeah. The role that I'm in now, I took over a couple of years ago some very, very broken businesses inside a gigantic company. So they're $2 billion in annual sales, about 5,000 employees within a $110 billion company. So one thing I knew was that there were 8 people who tried to fix the business before me. And those 8 people are no longer around. So this was a very broken business that had deeply entrenched and deeply dysfunctional ways of doing things. So there's a lot of unraveling that you have to do when you're in a business that has been around, that has these deep wounds and baggage, and it's like a big plate of spaghetti. You have to gently pull it apart and try to make some sense of it, deeply listening, having some degree of patience. When it's a smaller organization or a newer organization or a new organization, you have more of a white sheet of paper to get ideas, you know, on the page and to try things. And then there's less emotional baggage and history. So you might be more comfortable even scrapping things quickly and saying, oh, we tried that and it really didn't work, but we weren't that emotionally attached to that, so we're going to try this thing. Now, of course, there are pros and cons, because I don't have to go raise capital. If I need $10 million, I just go get it. You know, it's not a hard discussion for me. Even, you know, I exited hundreds of millions of dollars of businesses during the last couple of years. And in a big company, if you have a good business case, it's not a big deal. I don't have to go to bankers. I don't have to go to sing to investors to raise a round. And entrepreneurs do, and that's very hard sometimes. So there are definitely pros and cons, but if you can try to take the best of both worlds, it's pretty powerful. I think in the big business side, sometimes we're too slow. And one of the things I love about my businesses now is the way that it's structured. All the excess operating profit that my businesses cast off, I have the autonomy to reinvest that back in my businesses, which is kind of unusual in the context of our business and is a lot of fun, because there's less bureaucracy and a bit less short-termism in terms of the thinking, because I can think mid and long term and invest in the next $1 billion business, but I might have to wait 5 years for it to, you know, to really take seed. Oh, yes.
So, sort of talking about what you were saying earlier about it's always good to share your stories so like you can help other people. So like when you were talking about the 5 other people before, did you like study about like what they did wrong before you went into the industry?
That is a very good question. And the answer is yes. Because one of the ways that I did that was by talking to those who were willing to talk with me. Some of them more forthcoming than others. And then also in a business, you have your financial statements, your balance sheet, your income statement, your statement of cash flows, et cetera. So you've got your financials. And the financials are just an expression of what's happened operationally in the company. So if there were wounds in the company, I can see evidence of that in the financial statements, which is what I found when I was going through the financials. Ooh, we cut here. Ooh, we cut there. Okay, I see what, someone was trying to do here. So yeah, but that's a great, listening is extremely important in life, right? We can learn so much. One of my favorite quotes that I heard recently, given a lot of the divisiveness in our society, someone wrote this op-ed that I read, and they said, we should all be listening to be proven wrong, not to reinforce our existing belief, but listening to be proven wrong, because we should all be so passionate about trying to be right, accurate. And we're not always accurate. We always, therefore we have to kind of seek out lots of sources of information to make sure that our understanding is sound and that we're perpetuating facts. So.
Thank you for that. And Jackson, thank you for chiming in with a question. I loved that. On that note, we would love to be able to take some questions from the audience if folks are interested. So please feel free to share your questions via the chat function at the bottom of the Zoom page, and we'll try to take those one by one. And in the meantime, Stacy, we heard that you had a family Zoom Seder over Passover, and we were curious if you can offer any tips for all of us who are trying to work and go to school and connect with friends and family and keep up with our traditions all over video calls and virtual platforms.
Absolutely. How many people had a Zoom Seder? Yeah, right. It was the thing this year. And how many people had an extra plague this year called COVID-19? I'll never forget that part. Thank goodness for social media. I'm so glad that if we have to go through something like this, it's easy for me to call my grandmother. It's easy for me to FaceTime my mom so she can see our kids. I feel very, very lucky that we have all these options available to us. And we're just constantly trying to use everything within our means, including just old-fashioned letters. We've been writing old-fashioned letters to my grandmother who's in quarantine in New York, alone in her apartment for a long time now. And we've been sending her goodies like special cupcakes and drawings from the kids. And we call her, she's an old-fashioned telephone. She doesn't have a cell phone. So we do everything from Zoom Seders down to just beautiful old-fashioned letter writing and just trying to keep the cadence of connecting consistently.
Yeah, I feel like instead of like texting or something like that, it just makes people feel so much more honored to like actually get a letter that you put a lot of time into, instead of like just writing a letter on your phone or something like that. Like a handwritten letter is like the best it gets.
Special, right? Well said.
I love that. It looks like we have a question in the chat, and I'll just read it out loud so that we're all on the same page. From Molly Wertheimer, switching gears to a bit of a different topic, but how do you think your business has and will be affected by coronavirus? Do you think you're in a good spot compared to other retailers? And I want to add in just one other point that I would love for you to speak to, which is, how has the Home Depot Foundation responded to community needs during coronavirus? I would love for you to touch on both the business and the social aspect as well.
Absolutely. When this all started to come to fruition, we set out a few guiding principles that were really clear. We have a values wheel that our founders gave us that we take very seriously. I've never been in a company where we took it so seriously. We measure every associate against this values wheel formally twice a year. The values are quoted constantly every day, and they were the guiding light for everything that we did. And safety of our people was number one, no matter what. We would have shut down the stores in a heartbeat if we needed to do it to keep our people safe and to keep the community safe. luckily we were in the position to do a lot of the things that we did because we have a very strong balance sheet. We have a very high credit rating, and we had a lot of cash. And so it gave us a cushion. The business was healthy, which gave us a cushion to be able to do things like pay double overtime, pay extra bonuses, because our frontline workers, I mean, bless our frontline workers, because it has really been stressful and hard. And in places like New York and New Jersey, what they have gone through to make sure that, you know, we had a leak in our house during COVID where the whole ceiling in the basement fell down. I mean, there's a reason that for emergency supplies at minimum, that it's helpful to have some ability to get supplies. If, you know, if some of my friends live in apartments with one toilet and their toilet broke, and they said if it wasn't for Home Depot, I couldn't get my toilet to work during COVID-19. So we're glad to be able to serve the community, but it always has to be with safety at the forefront. We did all the other things like extending a personal time off for our associates so that if they needed to stay home to take care of a sick relative, or they were just feeling scared, we extended that, and we've extended it many times, especially for the high-risk population. We've given 60 days of free paid childcare to every associate, including all of our store associates. So we even now, if you get diagnosed with COVID, we send you a backpack with a blanket and chicken soup and a pulse oximetry monitor and a thermometer, just to say, like, we're thinking about you and we hope you're okay. And to be able to do that in a company with over 400,000 associates, we're the third largest employer in the United States. I'm so grateful that the balance sheet was strong and we could do things like that, that we're very much in line with the culture. And we've also done things like crowd limit the number of folks that can come into the stores, because we want folks to have space so they don't feel like they have to get, you know, we have to maintain 6 feet or more. We have dedicated folks in the stores that are sort of like the hall monitor, the safety monitor. They're going and making sure that everyone is far enough apart. We've got the markings on the floor. We have curbside pickup now, which we didn't have before. So if folks want to stay in their car, and that's a better option for them, we can just bring whatever they need out to their vehicle. So I'm proud of the way the company has handled a lot of that. And that's really the store side. That's not the part of the business that I'm running right now, although a lot of my people have gotten into the stores to help, and just, we call it pack down, just putting stuff on the shelves, just helping out wherever we can. So that's been good. And the company is, you know, will be good, and our people, hopefully in every single case possible, will stay healthy and feel like they can do what they need to do to take care of their families right now, because it's really just absolutely bizarre time. The other positive thing about the company is that we have this giant supply chain, and in our supply chain we had things like N95s, and we had a lot of cleaning supplies. So when everything started happening, and this is stuff you'll never read in the press, because our founders are Jewish, Bernie, Marcus, and Arthur Blank, and they believed in doing the right thing just because it was the right thing. And if you seek credit for that good thing that you did, then it undoes the thing. It's tzedakah, right? The principle of, you know. So you'll never read about any of this in the press because the company will never talk about it. But we froze everything in the supply chain. We gave away millions and millions of dollars of supplies to the hospitals, every N95 that we had, et cetera. And we'll continue to do whatever we can get our hands on to make sure we're helping the communities. So I think we have earnings on Tuesday, and I think they're going to quantify some of that for the first time, but they're gigantic numbers.
Oh, that's both incredible and also refreshing from personal experience to hear what you guys are doing during this crisis to support the frontline workers, for sure. This question is actually for Jackson. We heard you turned 11 last week, so happy birthday, first of all. Hopefully it was fun. Someone wants to know how you celebrated, first of all, and second of all, what advice you have for teens or just other people who are home celebrating birthdays and other moments together right now.
So lovely.
So first off, I celebrated by just just in general hanging out with you guys, and it's really special that during COVID, like you have so much time with your family members, and you get to do things that you probably wouldn't be able to do without this time. And so my friend came over and we were social distancing, but he was outside. He like came in his car and we exchanged birthday presents because his birthday is 2 days after mine. And so yeah, that was nice. And so I also saw these car parades, like Hudson had one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like my friend had one where all of the kids, like who are friends with the birthday kid, like drive around their street and like hand them the presents and just say hi and say like what they've been doing and that they'll hope to see them again soon.
Did you have a big embarrassing sign in front of the house?
Oh yes, yes, yes I did. So these people came and put the sign. We like rented the sign. It just said like "Happy Birthday, Jackson." I've seen a lot of other kids who like a lot of birthdays are in May here around here, and I've seen the same sign except for those kids. It's pretty neat. So I think I'd recommend like just being able to like for a kid who's having a birthday to just do some fun games with your family members, and also to maybe try and like say hi to your friend and social distance between like the car and like all that and just say hi. So yeah,
good advice.
Yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely, that's great advice. Thank you for that. It sounds like it was a good birthday. This next question is for both of you. What's one thing you guys have learned from watching each other work? So either Stacy, you on Home Depot, or both of you through your volunteer work in Our Happy Place, and things that you both try to bring from each other into your own experiences.
Yeah, it's funny you asked that question. Somebody asked that question because I was thinking about Jackson and his superpowers. And I think that your superpowers are clear very early in your life. And for Jackson, from the moment he was born, he had this ability to feel what other people were feeling. He is a highly empathetic person. And I wasn't born like that. That was something I developed over time. But Jack, even when he was small, he would constantly understand how other people were feeling. And he would always consider that when deciding what his own actions were going to be. And I really admire that. And you're much better at that than me. And you've taught me a lot about that. Sweet thing. All right, now back at you. What have you learned from watching me work? I'm scared to hear what the answer is.
So what I've learned from seeing you work is that it's really important to see what other people or like your co-workers have to say, and that like may really help you out in what you're doing in general, and like knowing everyone's opinion is superior.
Well said.
Absolutely. It's heartwarming to hear both of you guys talk about how much you've learned from each other. So I'd love to hear it. This is going to be our last question. Someone wants to know, for you, Stacy, what is one skill you have or you know now that you wish you had, or something you wish you knew earlier in your career?
Yeah. I was never very good at trust the process. I overthought everything. I was always worried. I was always over engineering everything. I did not stop to enjoy because I was always just so focused on making sure that it would go well, and I'd make my parents proud, and I would, get the perfect grade and the perfect placement and the perfect job. And if you work hard and your heart's in the right place and you're good to other people, everything is going to work out. It really is. And it took me a really long time to learn that. But now I can kind of suspend disbelief. I'm slightly better at suspending disbelief and going with the flow and knowing, because now I have so much evidence of seeing this over and over again, that really great things happen if you're putting in the effort and approaching things in the right spirit, and just to not overthink things too much.
That's awesome. Thank you both so much. We're really glad both you and Jackson were able to join us tonight. I think on that note, we're gonna wrap up, and I'll let Emily close us out.
Great. Thank you both so much, Rebecca, Emily. You guys are absolutely fabulous, and really great to be with all of you.
Absolutely. So nice to be with you guys. We're so grateful for the support from the Anita M. Perlman Women's Leadership Initiative Council members who helped make this event possible. For everyone joining us tonight, if you enjoyed tonight's program, you should check out our full schedule of events on BBYO On Demand, and consider becoming a member of our On Demand fan club for some exclusive perks and bonus experiences. Some of those upcoming experiences include a springtime closet refresh with Meredith Feinman. She's the author of the book Brag Better and host of the It Never Gets Old podcast, all about secondhand fashion and thrifting. And that's on Tuesday, May 19th. And then also a bonus session for our fan club members is a Q&A with the co-producer and writer of the NBC hit series This Is Us, coming up soon as well. So thank you guys.